Oh, that's right. Okay. These are notes. Guys, let's not, please.
Take your headphones out. Oh, I thought that's not. You want to pass those out for me? Sorry. Yellow ones. Yes. Whatever.
Are you tired, Mr. Kelly?
Headphones out.
Tired.
Other side too. Okay. So I believe these are number. What was last one?
5. This is 5.
34.
This is 6? Okay. These are number 6. So put them up in the upper right hand corner. So what we're going to do today is listen up. Okay, it is similar to what we did Wednesday. We're going to have radical equations. So just like Wednesday, we have to get the radicals alone. How do I cancel out a radical? How do I cancel out a square root?
George goes like this.
Nice try.
Put an X on it.
Right.
It's canceled now.
Find X.
How do I cancel out a square root?
You gotta put it in the second car.
Yes. So
That's the homework.
yes, like we talked about, guys. Listen up, please.
Listen.
If you can't sit where you want to, then we're not going to do it. Show me you can handle it. We're not freshmen. Then stop talking, please. Okay. So
I got a headache. I got time for you people.
as we look at these, we are going to do them just like we did Wednesday, except you're going to notice that you're going to get quadratic equations at the end instead of linear ones like we did Wednesday. However, the first steps are the same. So like we talked about Wednesday, if we have a radical equation, we're going to do square roots. First thing you do is you isolate. So you get the square root alone. You get away all the numbers that are on the outside. You move over to the other side, and then you get the radical alone. Once you get the radical alone, you square both sides. And the reason we square is because it cancels out the radical. And then we are going to solve, and then you always have to check. So again, like we talked about Wednesday, you have to plug it in to make sure it works. Sometimes these will come out that they don't work. Okay? The steps are the same. The only difference is when I'm solving today, I'm going to have to solve quadratic equations instead of linear equations, and that's going to make it trickier. However, all the ones on your homework, all the ones on your notes, you're going to be able to solve by factoring like we did on the warm-ups. That's why we kind of reviewed that. So you're not going to have to do quadratic formula. You're not going to have to do any other method. You're going to be able to factor them. Okay? So similar to Wednesday, except kind of a little extra, kind of a little harder. So let's look at one like 3. If I look at 3, we go through those 4 steps first. First of all, it's a radical equation. Why is this a radical equation? Don't overthink this. Because there's a square root. There's a radical there. There's a square root. Okay? So we go through the steps. First step, isolate the square root. Is the square root isolated? Yes. There's no numbers that are outside the square root. It is isolated. So we move on to the second step, which is we square both sides. You can only square both sides if the radical is alone. Sometimes it will already be alone. So sometimes you don't have to move numbers around before you square, like in this case. So we are going to square both sides. My left side will be y squared. Your right side,
18y minus 81.
correct. So this is exactly like Wednesday. When you square a square root, the square root and the square cancel, so you're left with whatever's on the inside. Now, here's where it gets different. As I try to solve this, we notice this is a quadratic equation because you notice a y squared. So now we're going to try to factor like we did on the warm-up. So to try to factor this, I have to get it equal to 0. So do I move everything to the left or do I move everything to the right? Why do I want to move everything to the left or everything to the right? I want to move it to the left. Why do I want to move it to the left? I could also get it equal to 0 by subtracting y squared. Why do I want to not subtract the y squared?
Why is it positive?
What's positive?
Y squared?
Y squared.
Easier that way?
Why do I want y squared to be positive?
Easier that
Because
way?
it's easier to factor. We can factor like on the warm-up, where you start with your 2 parentheses and do the shortcut. So always try to keep the number in front of y squared a positive 1. So I would have y squared minus 18y plus 81 equals 0. So even though it'd be easier to subtract y squared, I couldn't use the shortcut then, because then I'd have a negative 1 in front of y squared. This is stuff we've done before, but it's been a little while. Okay, now it's quadratic, so we're going to solve this by factoring. Like I've said, all the ones on the homework, you'll be able to factor. I'll just give you that hint. As I factor this will factor to
-3.
just like the warm-ups. How do I start factoring this? 2 parentheses. What goes in the front? Y's. Because you have 3 terms with a 1 in front of y squared. How do I find the numbers that go with it? Okay. So what are 2 numbers that multiply to give me positive 81 and add to give me negative 18? Negative 9. Negative 9. Like we've done before. So it's all review. It's just kind of getting back in the factoring. So now I look at this and I want to solve this. So I take
Y equals
y minus 9 and I set equal to 0. They're both the same, so you only have to take one of them.
so the 9 is 9.
So I add 9, so y is 9. So this is kind of a special example where I end up with one answer. Usually you'll get 2 for quadratics, sometimes you get 1 like this. So I end up with y equals 9. However, I need to always check it. So as I look at checking this, we're going to check it in the other box, so you have plenty of room.
Why do we have to check it?
Radical equations you always have to check, because sometimes you're going to get no solution. So if I check this, all you do is you take your original and you plug 9 where y is. So if this is my original, all you do is you take 9 and you plug it in where y is. So you get 9 equals 18 times y minus 81. And we want to see if this is true, which means, does the left side come out to equal the right side? So let's multiply. What's 18 times 9?
72.
What is it? Use calculator. 18 times 9. What is it? 162 minus 81. What is 162 minus 81?
81.
So we have square root of 81. What is the square root of 81? 9. So the left and the right side come out equal. So y does equal 9. If we plug it in and we don't get both sides equal, then it's no solution, like we talked about Wednesday. So the only difference today is we are going to get quadratic equations. Any questions on that? Okay, let's look at a harder one. Let's look at one like... yep, we can look at 7. Let's look at 7. Okay, let's look at 7. As I look at 7, first step, it's a radical equation. So first step is I need to do what? Do what? Isolate it. How do I isolate the square root? Add the 6, just like we did Wednesday. So I'm going to have to add the 6 to both sides. So a lot of this is kind of the same as Wednesday. On the left side, what will I have?
You will have -6.
Left side. V plus 6 equals the square root of 3v plus 58. Okay, am I ready to square this now?
Yes.
Yes, there's no numbers on the outside. There's nothing on the outside of the radical, so I can square both sides. Okay, now, as I look on the left side, it's a little different. On the left side, what do I have to do if I'm squaring v plus 6? We've done this before. If I'm squaring a binomial.
What you got before?
You have to FOIL. Remember, v plus 6 squared, we've talked about this before. Squaring a binomial, you can't distribute the exponent, so you have to write it as multiplying it by itself. V plus 6 times v plus 6. We talked about that when we did multiplying radicals last week. So now, on the right side, we'll deal with FOILing in a second, but on the right side, I'm going to have 3v plus 58.
Why are you reading? There's only two. Doing it there, man.
You're squaring the square root, so they cancel out, so you're left with what's on the inside.
You're squaring it on the square root, right?
Yes, those cancel. Those cancel, so you're left with 3v. So when you square a square root, you're left with what's on the inside. The square root and the squared cancel.
Yeah, I got that.
So you're left with what's on the inside.
Oh, never mind. I thought you were equaling that.
Oh, no, I wasn't. No, I wasn't foiling. I see what you're doing. So now let's FOIL the left side. When I FOIL, you're basically distributing, like we talked about last week, everything in the first term to everything in the second term. So what's v times v?
V squared plus v6
Okay, so v squared, v times 6, 6v.
plus 6v again plus 30.
Okay, then I distribute the 6, the second term. 6 times v, 6v. 6 times 6, 36. The right side is still 3v plus 58. So you've done this stuff before, it's just kind of putting it all together. Let's simplify the left side before I move things over. Left side will become v squared plus
36v 12v plus 36.
Okay. Add your 6 v's together. So v squared plus 12v plus 36 equals 3v plus 58. Now, like I said, I've given you the hint. These will all be factorable. So I need to get it equal to 0. Do I move things to the left side or to the right side? Left, because I want to keep the v squared a positive 1. So I'm going to subtract 3v. I put it under the 12 because I can actually put them together. I subtract the 58. Okay. We could technically move it over to the left side or to the right side, but I want to keep a positive 1 in front of v squared. So I will have v squared. We're going to cross out 8 so you can kind of use that space.
Plus 9v.
Plus 9v. 36 minus 58 equals 0. So now it's equal to 0. And like you will be able to factor all of these. So now we need to try to factor. How do I start factoring v squared plus 9v minus 22? Okay. There's a trinomial. There's a positive 1 in front of v squared. So 2 parentheses, v's in front. I need two numbers that multiply to give me negative 22 and add to give me 9. Okay. Check your signs. Which is positive, which is negative? Positive 11 and negative 2. They multiply to give me negative 22. They add to give you 9. You've done this stuff before. We're just kind of putting it all together, so it makes it kind of long. But that's why I'm giving you Monday to work on the homework as well. Now let's solve this. V minus 2 equals 0. V plus 11 equals 0. One answer will be V equals 2. The other answer will be V equals negative 11. Now you're all going to love me because I get two different answers. So when I check, I have to check both of them. Okay, so I'm going to check. Again, you don't have many questions on your homework. I'm giving you Monday, so I know these take a little bit of time. So that's why I'm not giving you a ton. You're going to have Monday, so just bear with me. So we are checking, listen up, we are checking both of them. So we're going to plug 2 in first. 2 equals the square root of 3 times 2 plus 58, and then minus 6 on the outside. Yes, this is stuff you would see in Algebra 2. Okay, so that's why I push you guys, because if you're not putting forth an effort in this class, when you get to Algebra 2, they're going to expect you to know it. So if you don't put forth an effort in Algebra 1, when you get to Algebra 2, you're not going to know how to do it because you didn't put forth an effort. So let's solve this. Let's see if this comes out true. So I plug 2 in. So 2 equals, what's 3 times 2?
6.
Plus the 58, minus the 6 on the outside. It's not under the radical, the negative 6. 6 plus 58. 64. Square root of 64. Square root of 64. 8. What's 8 minus 6? 2. So I get the left side equal to the right side. So I know V equals 2 is one of my answers because it came out true when I checked it. Now I have to check negative 11. You've done all this stuff before. These just take a while. Again, why I'm not giving you a ton of homework, I'm giving you Monday to work on it. So now let's check negative 11. Negative 11 equals the square root of 3 times negative 11 plus 58, and then minus 6 on the outside. You guys can do this stuff. We're doing exactly like we've done before, except if you get 2 answers, you may have to check both of them.
Wait, if one checks out, the other one's going to check out?
Not necessarily. So let's plug in negative 11. So negative 11, what's 3 times negative 11? Negative 33 plus 58. What's negative 33 plus 58? 25. Square root of 25? What's 5 minus 6? Does negative 11 equal negative 1? No. So a negative 11 doesn't work. So sometimes one of them will work, but not both of them. So you have to check both of them. So your only answer is V equals 2.
I'm bad, I got really pain on my black sweatshirt.
Sorry. Okay, we're going to do one more, and then we'll be done for today. Any questions? Take a while, but you've done everything before. Okay, let's look at 9. Okay, number 9.
Wait, go back to your other problem.
Okay, let's look at number 9. If I look at number 9, I need to isolate the square root first. What do I do to isolate the square root? How do I move the negative n over? Add n. Add n. Okay? So, anytime you have a radical equation, guys, we're going to be done after this one. Stay with me. Okay, anytime I have a radical equation, you have to get the radical, guys, get the radical alone. So we add the n. My left side will look like what?
N plus 5.
Let's do, yeah, n plus 5, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or 5 plus n, it doesn't matter.
It does matter.
The right side, we have square root of 8n.
Plus 24.
Guys, please stay with me. We're almost done. Okay, so we have n plus 5 on the left. We have the square root. Is the square root isolated?
Yes.
Yes, nothing is on the outside, so I can square both sides.
Yeah. Alright,
When I square on the left side,
you got a foil.
I'm going to have to FOIL. So write it as
Got a foil. Alright?
n plus 5 times n plus 5.
Yeah.
Okay, and you'll get the same answer. Square, guys, Squaring is the same as multiplying it by yourself, so write it like this before you try to FOIL it.
Equals
The right side will look like what?
8n plus 24.
Okay.
Then you go to the side of empty space. and then-
Now, on the left side, we actually have to FOIL this, so let's FOIL. So when I take the n, and I distribute it, that will give me,
n squared plus 5n
okay?
plus n squared again.
So, I took n's,
25.
David, I've asked you multiple times, please stop talking. We're almost done. So, n times n is n squared, n times 5 is 5n. Now we take the 5 and distribute it. So 5n plus
25.
25 equals 8n plus 24. Simplify the left side, which is
10n
n squared plus 10n
plus 25.
plus 25 equals 8n plus 24.
You're not even done.
Okay. We're going to move everything to the left side so I can keep n squared a positive 1. So I'm going to subtract 8n. Subtract 24.
n squared plus
Just a second. Just a second.
Alright. Alright.
Okay. So I put negative 8n under 10n. Negative 24 under 25.
Mine's more right than yours.
Guys, I understand you're doing it, but I'm in the middle of explaining it.
Alright.
So n squared, 10n minus 8n.
2n
2n
plus n plus 1
plus 1
equals 0.
equals 0.
That's easy.
So like I told you, all of these you will be able to factor.
I got, well, since
How do I factor n squared plus 2n plus 1?
It's a whale.
His name's David.
Oh, and
How do I factor this?
Negative 1, negative 1.
What do you put first?
What?
Dallas, what do you put first?
N's?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My bad. My bad.
Now what? Now what?
Negative 2, negative 1.
Nope. I need you guys like actually trying this, not just
You have to
staring at
multiply
it.
to get 1. What do you multiply to get 1? That'll add together to get 2.
1 and 1.
1 and 1. So n plus 1, n plus 1.
I said
Like
that.
that one.
Now,
That's it.
we have to solve this. Again, like the first one we did. These are both the same, so we only have to do one of them. So when I have n plus 1 equals 0, we subtract 1. So n is what? Negative 1. Sometimes you will only get one answer, which is fine. Then you only have to check that one. If you end up with two answers, you have to check both of them. So let's go ahead.
It's more likely you're going to get 2 than 1.
I would say, but it just depends. Okay, now we're going to check negative 1. So 5 equals square root of 8 times negative 1 plus 24 minus negative 1. So check that negative at the end. We are plugging in a negative 1. Seriously, we're almost done. Stop messing. Pay attention, please. Okay. So you plug in negative 1 where n is. So it's going to be minus the negative 1 at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as I simplify this, what is 8 times negative 1?
Negative 8.
Then we have the plus 24 on the inside. And then minus the negative 1 becomes plus 1 at the end. So I do the square root, and then I'm going to add 1 at the end. Negative 8 plus 24.
What?
Negative 8 plus 24.
16.
16 plus the 1 on the outside. Square root of 16
4.
is 4 plus 1, 5.
Yeah.
Yes, so my answer is,
5 equals 5.
my answer is n equals negative 1. So similar to what we did Wednesday, except we have to factor. If you guys haven't turned Wednesdays in yet, I also need that.
It's easy.
Then it should all be turned in.
Have you turned the
me to pass out the homework?
graded
If
one?
you could. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah.